Grinch.
Greetings, friends, horror fans, lovers of the occult, and welcome back to Grinch After Midnight. I'm your host, Grinch, and welcome back to another Friday and part 3 of our horror stories with twist endings trilogy. This is the final chapter, and then next week we dive into something a little different. I want to thank all of you for joining our fledgling channel here, all 16 of you. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. And I encourage you, if you're a fan of horror, the occult, the kind of things that most others don't enjoy, well then, my friend, you're right at home. We do this every Friday. After midnight, of course. So stick around. You're welcome here. Hit that red button, turn on notifications, and we'll see you every Friday after midnight. Let's get into it. Oh my God. I'm sorry, guys. I almost forgot. Number 10. The eyes are watching me. I bought a new house in the small town of Winthrop. The house was cheap, but the most important part was that I needed to get away from the city. You see, a few months ago, I had a run-in with a stalker. While I had managed to get him arrested, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes just constantly watching me. I felt like there were eyes everywhere, at home and on the street. So I decided to move out into the country to somewhere with less people, just for peace of mind. The house itself was big and somewhat old, but otherwise very welcoming. The agent who introduced me to the house had been required to mention that a serial killer had lived here in the past, which was why the house was so cheap. However, he, and later my next-door neighbor Sarah, both told me to pay the thought no mind. 4 other owners had lived in the house since then, and all of them were very happy with it. I loved the house. Its interior furnishings were beautiful and quite comfortable. The people of Winthrop were friendly, often bringing over freshly baked pastries or inviting me for dinner. Get-togethers, they said, were the key to making sure everyone who lived in Winthrop loved it there. Yet, after a week, I stopped loving it. The feeling of someone watching returned, relentlessly, worse than before. At first, I again tried to ignore it, but soon I started losing sleep. Giant bags grew under my eyes, and I began yawning, almost as much as I breathed. Sarah was kind enough to let me stay in her house for a few nights. It was during this time that I heard the legend of Forrest Carter, the serial killer who had lived in my house. While no one knows his exact kill count, Carter, also known as the Winthrop Peacock, was a man with extremely severe case of narcissism. Legends say that he couldn't fall asleep if he didn't feel like he was being watched. He was finally arrested for putting up a scarecrow to watch him during the night. Only it wasn't a scarecrow. You see, Carter had murdered a 17-year-old girl just so her corpse could stare at him. The story gave me shivers, and after I went home, I felt like there were hundreds of pairs of eyes, just watching me, no matter how I turned. Today, however, was the first day that I acted out. I was cooking breakfast when I felt the eyes. Instinctively, out of fear, I threw my kitchen knife, which lodged itself into the wall. As I pulled it out, I found myself staring at a pair of eyes, pickled in formaldehyde. I've been watching the police peel away the drywall of my house for 4 hours now. So far, they've found 142 pairs of eyes in little glass jars. The scariest thing is, each and every one of them is staring at me. Number 9. The twist at the end. Cradling my 4-year-old daughter in my arms, all I could do was listen as the screaming outside the house got louder and louder, interspersed with sounds of violence and horrible, horrible wet thuds as the unmistakable echo of muscle and sinew resisting the force that was slowly tearing them apart. It started just 3 days ago. Something happened out there in the world. And before we even got news of what was going on, seemingly half the world was gone. Police and military weren't able to stop it. Providing such a short frame of resistance, it's hard to know whether it was real or just a fluke. There was no centralized target, no way to use our most powerful weapons, not without incinerating ourselves in the process. They poured forth across the world from wherever it was that they started. I hear banging on the door downstairs now, as the screams of people being slaughtered, unable to mount a proper resistance against such a force. It doesn't take long before the pounding gives way to splintering as the sound of wood shatters. They're in the house now. No more than a moment or two passes before the door to the bedroom starts shuddering. The things I piled against it are holding, for now. But I know, realistically, they're going to manage to come through. I keep rocking my little girl, humming a lullaby in her ear to calm her as she cries. The pounding grows in force and volume, the frame starting to crack. I put my little girl on my lap, her back to my chest, and I stroke her head with both hands, from the top of her scalp, down across her ears, just as I've done ever since she was a baby, just the way she loves it. The effect is instantaneous. Her desperate crying calms to a series of sobs and hiccoughs, her small body shuddering against mine in fear. I keep humming to her, soothing her hair, acting for all the world as if nothing is out of place. Not a single thing amiss. Agonizingly slowly, in a reverse cadence of the sound of splintering wood, she calms down. I can feel it when she stops tensing, as I keep stroking her down the sides of her head, a final hiccough of a sob, and she falls quiet, her body relaxed. She doesn't even have time to realize what's happening as I twist her neck with a violent jerk, accompanied by a dry snap of a sound. She's dead before she can even slump down into my lap. The door is giving way now, the furniture pushed back. I may be torn from limb to limb while I scream, but at least my baby angel's safe from harm. Number 8. Crying isn't going to help. I pointed the gun at the sick bastard who killed my wife. He sobbed as he feared for what was to come. I pulled the trigger. If only he spoke and tried to reason with me, then maybe he could have lived. But that obviously was not going to happen. After all, he was only born just a few moments ago. Number 7. the return of the Messiah. In the year 2026, the Messiah came back down to earth. She performed miracles and cured the sick. There was no doubt as to her authenticity. She appeared to all nations at once. All believed. All worshipped her. Sometime later, after this period of our history known as the Age of Peace, she dropped a bombshell on us. She warned us that heaven was almost full. You see, nobody had gone to hell during this age. There were a fixed amount of spots left. Paradise would be closed to all who died after the gates closed. That is when the mass suicides began. Taking your own life, as she had told us, was not a sin if you died a pious man. The race was on. She looked on and was pleased. She returned to her home, to her throne of fire and flames, and greeted all with a nod of her wicked horns. Number 6. The enemy. I flung myself through the door and vaulted the toppled, long-dead refrigerator that served as an ineffective barricade in front of me. My legs propelled me through the room and into the small hallway on the other side. I couldn't stop to eat the expired contents of the fridge, appealing to me despite their stench after several days without food. The shrieks of pain and cries for mercy around me spurred my body onward and filled me with unexpected energy in spite of my hunger. We were at war. I came to a halt in front of a small bathroom, a noise. Something behind the shower curtain. My fear heightened, and images of the enemy flooded my mind. Merciless beasts wearing human skin, devouring indiscriminately, accepting no pleas, and respecting no argument. Zombies. It had begun as we expected, with a virus. The original infected were almost a cliché. There was no humanity left in them, just mindless rage, twisted bodies, and some primal urge to consume others. Our generation had prepared, with almost obsessive focus, for this monster. The first wave was eradicated, with almost laughable ease. We were not prepared for adaptation, however. We were not prepared for the creature we bred by destroying the instantly recognizable zombie. A creature with more tact. Most of the first zombies were killed at close range, you understand, since longer range attacks were less likely to be fatal. We had trained ourselves, even before the outbreak, to equate infection with death when it came to zombies. A person died when their eyes clouded over and they started biting, not when you put a bullet in their head. The new strain of the virus still controlled the body, yes, but it left other faculties to the host. Maybe you could pull the trigger on a hopelessly crazed caricature of your best friend, your spouse, your child. But what if there was still a soul behind those eyes? If, even as they attacked, they sobbed and screamed in their own voice, inside their head? All the virus needed was a moment's hesitation. I bet you'd hesitate. I did. Which is why, now, I could only watch as my arm wrenched back the shower curtain and my hands reached for the cowering child. Why, I could only beg for forgiveness before the virus used my mouth to tear ragged, bloody hunks from his body. Why, I couldn't even vomit as my hunger dissipated with the now sickeningly familiar taste of human flesh. We were at war, and I was the enemy. Number 5. So, I lost my phone. Last night, a friend rushed me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. After a few drinks, I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked the table we were sitting at, the bar, the bathrooms. No luck. So I used my friend's phone to call my own. After 2 rings, someone answered, gave out a low, raspy giggle, and hung up. I called. They didn't answer again. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause, and I headed home. I found my phone laying on my nightstand, right where I left it. Number 4. The brave ones. Here they come again, the brave ones. Another Halloween night, and the kids are back, here to prove their fearlessness. The house's floorboards creak beneath their sneakers. Only half an hour until midnight, so I have to work fast. I start with their flashlight, blowing lightly against it so that it flickers. But this inspires little more than nervous giggles. 15 minutes until midnight. Time to take things up a notch. I hover up to the ceiling and will my body into flesh. My every nerve is on fire. But they've given me no choice. I force drops of blood to trickle out my nose. But the boys below still do not notice me. I knock against the ceiling, but they won't even look up. I thought this place was supposed to be haunted, says the leader. What a joke. 5 minutes until midnight. I'm running out of time. With the last of my strength, I scream. So loud that they finally turn to look up at me. I like to think I put on a good show. I sway on an invisible noose. The blood flows freely from my nostrils now. A couple of drops hit a skinny one with a crew cut. The boys scream and run off into the night. Just in time. Below me, I hear the thing turn. Its disappointment palpable. For now, it sleeps. But one day, I will fail. The boys will be too brave, and I won't scare them out in time. One day, they will wake it. Number 3. A nap in the car. Mommy always leaves me with Daddy at home on Saturday nights. And me and Daddy always go get ice cream in the car after dinner. I have to sit in the back seat until I'm a big boy. I go into the kitchen to see what Daddy is cooking for dinner after my Barney movie is over. He's not in there this time. I saw a note on the counter that said Mommy and Uncle James were going somewhere together. I'm not sure. I don't read that good. I go find Daddy in the garage. I shut the door behind me like I'm supposed to. Daddy is in the car and he already has the car turned on. We must not be eating dinner tonight, only ice cream. I get in the back seat behind Daddy since I'm not a big boy yet. Daddy doesn't say anything when I say hello to him. Maybe he can't hear me over the loud car. I think I'll take a nap on the way to get ice cream. I feel kind of sleepy. Number 2. What they don't tell you about the dead. I don't want to sound mean, but the dead are pretty clueless. I've always seen them. When I was younger, everyone thought I was just talking to imaginary friends. After a couple years, when I overheard my parents talk about calling a psychiatrist, I realized what I was talking to. See, ghosts don't tend to realize they're dead. And they don't look like they do in the movies. They look just like us. I'm pretty smart for a 13-year-old. So I started noticing certain patterns to tell them apart from the living. They could be a bit distant from living people, or you'd see them try to talk to people who wouldn't even notice them. Some of them could tell I was different, that I noticed them. Like this guy I saw after school yesterday. I'm a big boy now, see? I don't need my parents to pick me up. Home is just a short walk away. He was standing away from the other parents. Didn't talk to them, just stared at me. That's how I knew he was one of the ghosts. I went over, told him I knew what he was, and asked how I could help him. I don't remember much after that. I think because of what happened this morning. Downstairs my parents were crying. I tried talking to them, but they just ignored me. They must have died last night somehow. Sometimes the new ghosts wouldn't talk to me. Some police officers and reporters just arrived. They won't talk to me either. They just talk to my parents. It's weird. I've never seen so many ghosts together before. Why won't anyone talk to me? Number 1. A message from your personal demons. Hello, my dear. You do not know who I am, but I know you. I am one of 3 demons that were assigned to you at birth. You see, some people in this world are destined for greatness, destined to live happy, fulfilling lives. You, I'm afraid, are not one of these people. And it is our job to make sure of that. Who are we, you ask? Oh, yes, of course. How rude of me. Allow me to introduce us. Shame is my younger brother, the demon on your left shoulder. Shame tells you that you're a freak, that those thoughts you have are not normal, that you will never fit in. Shame whispered into your ear when your mother found you playing with yourself as a child. Shame is the one who makes you hate yourself. Fear sits on your right shoulder. He's my older brother. As old as life itself. Fear fills every dark corner with monsters. Turns every stranger on a dark street into a murderer. Fear stops you from telling your crush how you feel. He tells you it's better not to try than to let people see you fail. Fear makes you build your own prison. Who am I then? I am the worst of your demons. But you see me as a friend. You turn to me when you have nothing else, because I live in your heart. I'm the one who forces you to endure, the one who prolongs your torment. Sincerely, Hope. Thank you.